I guess for me, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, it's not my identity, but it's definitely a big part of my identity. I think when I think of words that describe me the most, it's like, okay, first, I love the Lord. Second, I love my family. And then, distant third, but before work, before a bunch of other stuff comes jiu-jitsu. It's a passion. It's a hobby. It keeps me sane. It's my release from like everything else. If I get grumpy, my wife's like, you need to go train. If I didn't have jiu-jitsu, I would have no release outside the grind of normal life.
Piggyback on what you say. Again, jiu-jitsu's not who I am, right? But one of the first things that I thank God for when I get on my knees, when I think about my life, is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And not just being able to roll and, to go handle somebody or to feel, I can tap that guy or I'm this or I'm that. But the release, the friendships, the relationships, the ability to impact other people's lives. So often when you talk about people's careers or you talk about what they're called to do, it's really, what are you called to do so that you can impact other people's lives? Like if you break down that question, and, I was in corporate America for 15 years and I've done different things, but I have the most impact via jiu-jitsu. So I'm thankful for jiu-jitsu, much like you're talking about. So it's not who I am, but man, I'm a lot better because of it. So I get on my knees and I'm like, thanks for not taking this away from me. You know what I mean? I'm thankful for it.
I've used the term therapy a lot through the training, and it's the same thing like Bray was just saying. My wife will tell me, "Oh, she actually knows you haven't rolled in a little while," because I'll come home and be upset or whatever it may be. She's like, "Oh, you need to go train, go get your therapy." And that's kind of my basic theory on what my jiu-jitsu life is like.
I agree with everything I think you guys have said. I think one of the things jiu-jitsu does for me is it really helps keep me humble. You know what I mean? Not only in, jiu-jitsu, but in almost everything else you do. You know what I mean? I just think, every single day that you come train, you're constantly training with, people like yourselves. And, so there really is no, chance for you to have an ego or anything like that. I think it's dealt with pretty quick. And, I love the fact that it gets me in check pretty quick, and I agree with almost everything else you guys have said, 100%.
Jiu-jitsu has been like a way of life for me. It's definitely something that's I think jiu-jitsu has kept me alive. I think any of you guys that unfortunately know there's probably a black sheep, that would be me. I've gone through a lot of stuff in my life, and jiu-jitsu's really helped bring me back to center a lot of times. We'll talk about the camaraderie later, but camaraderie in these guys has really kept me alive a lot of times, more than they realize. So that's been a huge part of it for me, is to be able to have guys that I know I can count on for anything.
I agree with that. I think the culture and the camaraderie is super important. It's not something I thought that, would be important to me when I first started jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? And you quickly see, especially in the gym that we're in, I think that's been one of the most important things about, rolling with Paul and, Sam being part of that and everybody else being part of that is, it's almost as if, the second I started jiu-jitsu, I was part of the family. There's no question. It was, immediate. And I'm not sure I've ever been part of anything else like that, not from a work environment or, meeting new people or anything like that. It was almost instantaneous, and it almost felt like you belonged almost immediately. So,
and then it grows. So it grows organically and exponentially. So like you started an academy. So somebody walks up to me and they say, "Oh, I train at Helix." Man, the interaction is different. Not to say I'm a jerk to people I don't know, but the interaction, interaction is different. It's almost like it's like you're a cousin, almost. You know what I mean? But you get the benefit of the doubt, and to have something like that, to me, that's part of the answer to what is jiu-jitsu. You especially as you have a team, and when I say team, not like any kind of fake way, like a banner way or whatever. Paul and I, we don't wear the same patch sometimes, but that doesn't mean we're not teammates, right?
Right.
Like, I consider all you guys besides Josh to be on my team. Be on my team. No, in seriousness, all you guys to be on my team because we sweat together, we're on the mat together. You guys get the benefit of the doubt. Somebody says, "Oh, I know Bray, and I started training with Bray. He teaches me sometimes." "Oh man, come on in. Hey, sit down." You know what I mean? And to your point, it's awesome.
Sure.
So to your point though, you were talking about when you got started. So talk about what brought you to jiu-jitsu and why you got started.
Well, I actually really didn't have a desire to do jiu-jitsu at all, to be honest with you. I wrestled for quite some time before. I went through, high school, did that. I did some junior varsity coaching and things like that. And, I really enjoyed the aspect of wrestling. And it seemed like once that ended, I really didn't have anything else. And my brother, joined the military shortly after he went to college. And, was in Ranger School. And I guess one of the combatives or part of the combatives program that they teach is jiu-jitsu. And so he called me up and said, "Listen, we gotta do this. This is amazing. Like, I've never seen anything like it." And to be honest with you, I was always very arrogant, for the most part, against most martial arts. I just didn't see them as being practical or functional or any of that stuff. And I think a lot of that has to do with wrestling. And I would tell you that most wrestlers probably feel the same way now, even still. I went into another gym and I tried it and just didn't think it was for me. It was something that I just didn't grasp immediately. I felt there was a lot of ego in the room, you know what I mean? And I felt like the place I went to, I was going to get hurt pretty quick. And so I wrote it off, didn't think anything about it. And I got a phone call about a week later and said, "Hey, I talked to this guy on the phone, Paul Creighton. I think we should try. I think we should check it out." And we went up there the first night, and I think chances are all three of you guys were there. And I went in and talked to Paul, and was pretty much one of the nicest guys, very genuine, very sincere. And I tried it there, and the experience for me was my first night. I got put with a guy that still trains with Paul. His name's Dan. And I think at the time, Dan was probably 56, 57 at the time, white-haired guy, mustache. I outweighed him probably by 45 pounds. And, real nice guy. And, Paul pairs me up and says, "Oh, you'll be great. Roll with him. You'll be fine." And I rolled for 5 minutes, and he taps me out 3 times. And, at the end of the class, I got done with Paul, and Paul says, "How did it go? How was the class?" And I was like, this is for me.
That's cool.
And so, I think just a humbling experience right off the bat was awesome. But I didn't have a desire to do it until I got one class in, and then it's just kind of like you were talking about earlier, Sam. You start real small, and then all of a sudden it builds, and you start to form quick relationships with people, and so that was my brief intro into it, and here I am. So.
Yeah, my background is kind of similar to yours. I wrestled in high school. I was not as good a wrestler as you were.
I was terrible, by the way.
Whatever.
So let's get that on. Tape.
No, whatever. You were so terrible, you quickly became Paul's best fan. There's not too many gold. Only one gold one. But after graduate school, I was looking for something to do to stay kind of in shape, because when I went to college, I graduated high school at 170 pounds, graduated college at 210 pounds, and then I graduated grad school at like 175, and I was like, I don't want to get fat. Not that I've ever been super skinny or whatever, but I didn't want to be 210 pounds again. And I got a free class to try jiu-jitsu somewhere, and it wasn't with Paul. And I went and I walked in and I wrestled, and I was like, I'm looking around at a bunch of blue belts. They had a traveling brown belt at the time that would come in, and they were part of his association. And I'm looking at this dude that they're pairing me up with that's going to be like my tutor for the day. And I'm like, I'm going to be right? And like he threw me like a rag doll. And he was like just this dorky dude. He was just a goober. And I was like, how is this guy beating my tail mercilessly? So I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and I was like, I'm going to sign up. I got to do this. And he's like, dude, my buddy Paul's getting ready to move back. Don't sign up. You want to sign up with Paul. And I didn't know the difference between Paul, who was a brown belt at the time, And these blue belts, I mean, they were all a lot better than me. I didn't know. I didn't care. But I trusted this guy. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll sign up with Paul. And when he got here, I signed up. And Josh had trained with him before. But I took like 2 private classes with him because I wanted to get going before he started like his group classes. And at that point in time, it was like me, Josh was a blue belt, and a couple other guys that aren't really around anymore. But it was, there was probably 5, 6 of us just training before he even moved to his first
A
gym.
little spot, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I got started.
I like Paul's version of your story a little bit better. which is like, I guess if you own an academy or you're an instructor somewhere, you get the frequent guy at the bar. It's like, I gotta come train with you.
I was trying to lead that part. That doesn't look too good for me.
That sounds more like the Bray that I know. That sounds more like the Bray that I know.
Yeah, that was before I got married. That was that was
Before the beard.
But he showed up.
yeah.
He came and did it.
So to continue on that, I guess Paul was like, "Yeah, buddy." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna train with you. I'm like all in his face, and he's like, "Okay, buddy, sure, buddy, whatever." And he's like, "Come see me tomorrow." And he's thinking to himself, he'll tell you, he's thinking to himself, "I'll never see this guy again." I show up the next day with my bag. I was like, "When do we start?" And he's like, "You're serious?" I was like, "Yeah, but I mean, you got time right now?" And he's like, "No." But so thanks, Josh.
Yeah, that's funny.
I had a similar experience. I weighed about 210 pounds. I was in a tree business, and I bench pressed about 375 pounds. And I ran into a judo black belt that was about 160 pounds. He threw me around like a kid. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I was sore for 2 weeks after about a 20-minute beating. And I said, man, I gotta know what that's about. I gotta figure out how in the world did this just happen to me? Because I thought, because you're delusional before you start grappling, in my opinion, as to what you're really capable of doing in a real situation. And I was highly delusional because I got worked. And I was like, man, this is unbelievable. So I said, I gotta learn this. And so I started training somewhere, and it's humbling, man. The first year they say you learn to tap, and then that's all I did was just tap forever, because I had nothing but black belt privates for over a year. Anyway, I just got killed every day. It was crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah, I started. I had a couple buddies that trained at the Atlanta Athletic Club with Paul, and they invited me to go train. We were 16. It was 1996, and we were all young guys, and we had a very small, I think it was considered like the golf room at the Atlanta Athletic Club. It was like up a set of stairs off where nobody else goes, and we went in there and had to set up the mat. I was like, what in the world's going on here? It's like not a jiu-jitsu facility, not a jiu-jitsu room, and we had to kind of like re-coordinate the whole room just to even start. And but it was
Every week, right?
Every week, yeah.
Or however many times a week I'll train.
Yeah, we'd have to tear the room down, set our stuff up, and then, man, got me hooked from the get go.
That's such a great story, man.
Yeah.
Like starting, being, because you never forget when you start, just recently starting a school, you go in the first few days, and from Paul's perspective, because Paul and I talk like every day especially the first couple of months. You don't know if one person's going to show up.
Sure.
Big class is like 4 people. You just don't know. And some days you get terrified. So, man, Paul, like, that probably means a lot to him. But I started, you guys remember the American Pie?
Yeah.
I was a bouncer at the American Pie. So Roadhouse had come out. Roadhouse had come out. So, we all thought we were tough, right boot. And so I go to break up this fight, and this guy, I have my Choi Kwan No, which is lethal. Like Holly Holm, when I have distance, so this guy, I go to break up this fight. This guy grabs me, and man, I'm like terrified. I turned white. I was so terrified. I like grabbed the bar stool, trying to stay up, and it flashed through my head. I said, if I go to the ground, none of my stuff is going to work. I really thought that. So the next day I'm driving around and I'm looking for something more real. It's not like today. When you jump on the internet, you can find it.
Right.
Driving around, this is like 98, right? I'm driving around, and Frankie's at the Prado was right over there. That's where Lions first had their school. That's where I first met Paul. And I go and I'm reading the wall, and it's like, oh, streets of Gracie, all this stuff, fighting on the street. So I show up, to take a class.
Dude, I hope you're telling this story.
Tell the
I hope you're telling the story.
So I show up, and a guy walks up, like you said, all blue belts, right? And the guy's got a blue belt, and he's like, yeah, you can come, trying to tell me about you, come take a class or whatever. I'm like, dude, I'm a black belt. Go get the instructor. I said, hey, I'd just like to come in. He gets Geraldo Bug. Barely speaks English, right? So I'm like, hey, I'd like to come, maybe spar a little bit, because he came in and do a little sparring. So I show up that night. He goes, yeah, sure. So I come that night. I've got what look like Vale Tudo gloves, even with a little pipe right there that I can squeeze. I got my black belt, black pants, black shirt. I'm in the corner going, shoot, you're going to fall. So, like, I'm talking, and then, one of the guys comes up and he goes, man, so you're gonna train with Geraldo? I'm like, yeah. He goes, and he goes, okay, cool. And I'm like, I'm thinking about this, and then another guy comes up, Rob Confracy, Paul knows him. He was really one of the best blue belts at the time. He walks up and man, I don't think you should do this. Apparently, Geraldo was in the back. Geraldo was in the back smacking himself. He was ready. He had his gloves. He had knee pads. He had his Vale Tudo trunks. I didn't even know how to tap. I thought we were just going to spar, like do a little sparring, Time out. I would have died. So he comes out and he's like, I said, sir, I think I would like to take the class. So I took the class, and I was like, thank God, because people were choking me. And I signed up. Well, Jacare came back into town. So they said, hey, Jacare, here's the guy who came in the other day. And Jacare starts laughing. And I said, sir, I'd like to sign up. And I signed up. So that's how I signed up. That's how I found jiu-jitsu.
My favorite part about jiu-jitsu, we talked about this a little bit when we were talking at the beginning. But, besides, like, this is the only exercise I do. I don't run unless I'm being chased. I don't lift weights. I don't do anything. And that, you wouldn't be able to tell that by looking at it. But, so I love this exercise. But I do think, like, as you were talking about, like, relationships forged on the mat, they're just different. Yeah. It's just different. The mat's always the great equalizer. The relationships that you forge on the mat are just different. Like I saw this is the first time I've seen Josh today in a long time, because our training schedules are just opposite now. There's so many options to train, but it's like every time I see or think of Josh, I think about just starting, and what we did when it was just 4, 5, 6 of us in that little room, and Josh actually started twice, because he started, Paul moved away, and then he came back and he had to not start all over. He was already a blue belt when I started, but I mean, the relationships that are there in jiu-jitsu and what you do. And even when you travel, there's just a camaraderie. Like, you used to travel a lot for work. Yeah. I've traveled some. And the thing about it is, like, you can go into any jiu-jitsu gym. And for us, whenever I go, I always try to find a Henzo affiliate. And, somebody, I'm like, I train under Paul Creighton. And they're always like, oh, you're Paul's student. Come on in, man. And usually there's no mat fee or anything like that. It's like, oh, Paul, come on in. And, but you train with somebody 1 or 2 times, you feel like you're good friends and you've been there forever. But when you train with somebody as much as and as long as we've all trained together, it's like that exponentially. Yeah. I think that's the relationships. You can't beat them.
Relationships are viral too. Some of my best friends on the mat have been friends that I've made through other friends via jiu-jitsu. So, like, Tim Miles is a black belt under Joe Diaz. The only reason I know Joe, I became friends with him because I was Yamasaki and Henzo guys who used to compete. But I knew Paul. So we'd be at the tournaments. We'd be like, oh, you're Paul's friend. And then you'd become friends, And it's like the relationships, they build off of that. Like, somebody knows somebody. It goes beyond, you have, like, the team affiliations, and that smooths the door. And then you have the friends. Oh, you know this person? Oh, yeah, man, he pinged me. He said you were going to come by. And all of a sudden, they're treating you, like, with care. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, there's so many, man, if relationships and if relationships all worked like the way they do in jiu-jitsu, the world would be a lot better place. Like people would treat each other a lot better. You know what I mean?
So true.
Yeah, I mean it's like
So true.
it's the most powerful statement that I can make about it. If relationships and other facets of our lives worked like they do in jiu-jitsu, you know, it would be a world to be a better place. I agree.
Just to, piggyback off what you're saying, when you come into jiu-jitsu, there's no. I don't even know what a lot of guys do for a living. I have no idea. I don't care what they do for a living. It's like you could be rolling with a multimillionaire or a guy that just had a gi and was homeless last week, and it doesn't matter. It's like there's no race, there's no color, there's no this, there's no nothing. You come on the mat, you're all equal, and I think that's part of what forges that brotherhood. It's like or even sisterhood. Now we're getting so many more girls that are doing it now, but nobody cares what you do. It's like let's just roll. Let's have fun, And that's not like that out in the real world. It's just not like that.
It's one of the things I like about it too. I mean, I could talk about this for days, but I mean, I love the fact that there is everybody comes in the same. Nobody gets a head start.
Yep.
There are no shortcuts.
Yep.
The only way that you get to where you want to be is through work.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think in today's society and things like that go on, there are a lot of shortcuts that take place, and I think that probably speaks to what you're talking about, Mark. With the work is all that matters. It doesn't matter your color, where you're at in society, all of it. I know you talk about that all the time, Sam, and I couldn't agree with it more. I just think that, to your point, forges a lot of the brotherhood and all that stuff, and it's one of the things I really enjoy.
What's a meritocracy? Like you're forced to live in a meritocracy.
Yeah.
So you might not. First of all, when you don't even have time to think of it. Like I don't. Have you ever had that thing where you've been training with somebody for a while and somebody asks you a question about that person, like about that, like what is he Scottish or is he Jamaican or like?
Right.
And you're like, I don't know. You're like,
He's a purple belt.
Like, I've been training with that guy for 5 years. He's your favorite training partner. You're always rolling. Man, you hang out with that guy after class all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, you guys go out to eat after class sometimes. You're like eating off the same plate. You have no idea. Or you walk out of the gym at the same time you happen to. You're like, nice car, bro. You know what I mean? And then you're like, you start thinking, you're like, I have no idea what you do. And you still don't care.
Yeah.
But it highlights how when you're in here, every time somebody makes a decision to walk through the door, they're making the same decision you are. Sometimes it's hard. Like nothing is given, right? And you respect it. And I always tell people my like button is close to my respect button. So when I respect people, it's so much easier for me to like them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like jiu-jitsu. Like I respect anybody who tries.
That's why I don't.
And you're on the mat. You're trying. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're trying. So,
one of the other things I like about it too, I guess, getting away from kind of the high level stuff is, I think most people are intimidated by problems or by not being able to do something or by being shut down by something. And I think when you start jiu-jitsu, it takes a very unique person to be able to come in and get beat up, because everybody does.
Yes.
Come in and get beat up and then come back the next day and know it's going to happen again and know it's going to happen again. And, I read an article where Anthony Bourdain was talking about, his goal is just to come in the next day and suck a little bit less than he did the day before. And I think that's, 100% valid. I love, even more so now than I ever did, the problems that come up and how it changes and how you have to solve the problems and how you have to do things different and the way that everybody here rolls different and the way I have to address all of those problems differently. And, it's always changing. You're always learning. You've never gotten to where you want to be. And the further you get in jiu-jitsu, the more you realize that you really don't know, anything. You know what I mean? It's fascinating to me. I love that. Keeps me engaged the whole time.
Would that be the hardest part for you initially? Because you said now you love it, but initially
the hardest part
of jiu-jitsu.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah. I got a ready answer.
Yeah.
Hardest part for some of the staff.
The hardest part to me is, he was sort of saying it just a second ago about, learning and this and rolling with different people. And when you go up against something, and I've been doing this a long time, so I can understand the game. But you roll with somebody and you just for some reason, a bad matchup is the most general way to say it. That's the most frustrating thing. Because It
What do you
doesn't
mean a bad-
make
what do you mean
it
a
doesn't
bad
make
matchup?
it doesn't make sense technically. It
Alright.
doesn't make sense physically. It's just a bad matchup for you for some reason. You can't figure it out.
Like their game, their body type,
Justin's never
it's
had
a challenge.
it's just something.
Justin can't relate.
That's why he. Yeah.
Justin's like bad
so
matchup. What does that mean?
I don't have problems with anybody.
Yeah, bro.
Mine is easy. Mine's growing older on the mat, and these guys dog me about it all the time. But when you get as you age and you get over 40 and you get 45, 46, 47, you got the injuries and this and that, and you got the
55,
younger guys coming up behind you.
Yeah.
It's tough because you're not going to be as good as you were 20 years ago, but you still have the same mind and you still got the knowledge, but you may not have the lightning fast skill that you once had. So it's a little bit, that's tough, but in the same sense, I wouldn't trade it. I mean, I'll still be doing it 20 years from now if I have to get rolled in there, which is probably what's going to happen.
Oh yeah. Well.
The toughest part for me, along those lines, all of them, is and it's one of the things I like about it too, allowing yourself to evolve, right? Best way I can describe it is I remember when I was a purple belt and I started teaching class at the Yamasakis, I used to have problems with this guy. He was a little bit bigger than me. I was a little ahead of him in terms of being technical, but he was bigger and stronger, really strong, right? And then one day I would always have problems with him. And then one day I was hurt, and then we were rolling again. And I was like, man, I'm not going to push back, right? I'm going to accept where he comes, and I'm going to respond. And man, I rolled with him better than I ever rolled with him. And from then on, I never pushed back.
Yeah.
And then I realized I was holding myself back because I wasn't trusting my jiu-jitsu, right? I wasn't I was trying to respond the same way I responded to everybody else, but I had the tools to respond a different way, And it's weird, and that's the toughest part for me sometimes. Sometimes when I have a particular problem or a bad matchup or somebody who's really tall, or somebody where my game doesn't work as well, my A game, well, I have B, C, D, E game,
Right.
I have to trust those.
Right.
But I have to trust those,
Yeah.
right? And so it's one of the things I enjoy because I solve those problems and I'm like, man, my jiu-jitsu is better than I thought. But it can be frustrating at that time because, man, I want to have the magic all the time, you know what I mean? And my body getting older. As you get older, the injuries.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I got my cauliflower here, I got my back, I got to go to the chiropractor. Man, sometimes I would, it's great. And just knowing when to say no so that I can say yes more often in terms of training.
Yep.
Those are the things that I struggle with.
Justin doesn't have anything different.
Yeah.
No, he does front.
He's like, I got nothing.
No, I would say the hardest part for me about jiu-jitsu is probably, myself, like the mental aspect of, kind of what you're talking about, having to face, other people and, really the mental battle that goes on when you're going up against somebody else is, you can defeat yourself quicker than, the other person, can beat you up. And I think from time to time, that's probably been my biggest struggle is, not counting myself out, you know what I'm saying? And trusting the technique and, being able to push yourself through a lot of that stuff. But I think everybody faces that, especially in the beginning. And, for me, it's always been there, you know what I mean? So just, and then, the other aspect for me about jiu-jitsu is, the hard part for me is, I think the jiu-jitsu part's important, but then the conditioning piece too. I think a lot of us, work and I run a little small gym on the side, and Sam, I know you do as well too. And I think some of the conditioning to stay on top of where you need to be has become probably one of the more difficult things for me than jiu-jitsu itself, because
I was
I would roll all day if I could.
I was going to say that, but I don't want to sound like I was making excuses. But there are just days for me, I usually leave the house real early in the morning. I'm usually out of the house. I mean, not Josh early, but
My ends early.
but I'm usually out of the house at 6:15, and I'm so grateful that we have the morning classes now, because that's I've been awake for 5-6 hours at that point in time. I'm feeling good. It's good. But on days where I'm supposed to train at night, it's I get around to, I've left the house at 6:15, and training doesn't start till 7:30. Man, I'm dead. I'm tired, And because I'm leaving so early, and because I have 5 kids, and because I have, a wife, and all these things, I don't this is the only thing I do for exercise.
Yeah,
And if I
yeah.
don't train, if I don't mentally push the pace and mentally get myself in that mode where I'm training hard all the time, cardio.
Those have been some of the best nights I can remember in terms of jiu-jitsu. The nights that I don't want to go because I'm so tired. And, you know, again, it goes back to the mental aspect, forcing myself. I mean, I remember driving up to Paul's at the old gym and I exhausted, just tired. And I would pull up and I'd sleep in the car for an hour and a half.
And we'd be like,
And my drive's 45 minutes to get back home, you know what I mean? And so I would do it on purpose, knowing that when I woke up, I didn't have a choice. Well, you got to train now. What did you do? You drove to get here to take a nap to drive home. You know, that helped me a little bit. I made myself do it. But those nights when I went in on those specific nights, you'd walk out and be like, "My God, that's awesome!" You know, you do so much better on those nights. That's where I felt.
You know what? And I agree with everything you said, but I do have to say, man, that's one thing that Paul does really well. Paul doesn't he doesn't force goals on us. You know what I mean? When I got to the academy, being reunited, Paul moving back down here, I was driving 45 minutes to go up there, even though I used to train with Jacare, and, Jacare would have welcomed me there any place, man. I was, wanted to be there. One of the things I love is that, high level jiu-jitsu, but Paul doesn't force anybody to do anything. He wants to help you fulfill your goals and help you be a better person using jiu-jitsu to be a better person. You know what I mean? Like, there's some places, and I think we should take that for granted, the positive influence that, he's had on that. Like, he never said, yo, man, you don't come if you can't go hard tonight.
Yeah.
And then you're like, dude, I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't do that. Yeah. But there's some places that do that. So, like, the culture that we're accustomed to, I think we gotta, because like you said, you went to a gym and you just didn't feel it.
Yeah.
Like some people, they never have that perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so starting a gym, now you'll see people will come in and they'll say, well, I had a bad experience. And some people will only have your perspective coming into your gym, and they either need a friend to remind them, or some people never understand.
Yeah.
Like, they never understand that this isn't the way it is everywhere. Right. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny you say that because, I distinctly remember some very high level guys coming into the gym, you know what I mean? And, doing some work with Paul, and, Paul learned from them too. And, but, they would come in, and almost every single time after they would, help in class or go through class and, kind of sit and watch class, all of them were like, man, this is incredible. Like, how do I, so these guys, these high level guys are asking, how do I do this?
Yes.
How do I create this environment? How do I create this culture?
That's what I said too.
It's
instant.
I agree. I think the culture is very different. I've been a bunch of different places, and I've seen it, and I've also seen the opposite. You know what I mean? And I think that it's one of the things I appreciate the most is the culture. I think you're right.
And that's top down.
Yeah, that comes straight from Paul.
That comes straight from Paul.
Yeah.
And you tell when you walk into another gym and they carry themselves a certain way, you know how that instructor is going to be.
Yeah.
That's
And I think it weeds itself out really quick. I think especially where we're at now. I mean, I think back to the small gym days when we were there, kind of what that would look like, and how certain people got put with certain people. how you fix the problems when they come in pretty quick. But I think that, I think that that's it now. I think people come in and they see the culture and they see what's been established, and they either
well, to some degree, you still get those.
You still get some knuckleheads that come in. I mean, it's part of what it is, you know what I mean?
It is what it is. It's a combat sport.
Yeah. But I think the other thing that happens in those situations too, though, is, they become the person on the outside.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So they're kind of the oddity to the gym.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, I've been in gyms where people like each other. You know what I mean? And it's really odd, especially when you come from where we come from. Yeah. They don't like each other. They don't like to hang out with each other.
Right.
It's just a weird dynamic. It's a weird environment. And I really, value, what goes on where we're at.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, it's tough to relate to, but people don't like each other. You know what I mean? And then, like, when you talk about, like,
but see, and that, to me, and I agree. I hear both y'all, but it's like that's one of the things about the environment that's like he's created. It's like something you desire to be there.
Yes.
You desire to be around those people.
Yes.
Because I'm like, training is fun. It's a hobby,
Yeah.
but it's like Justin's first experience. If you don't like it, then I mean, jujitsu could be awesome. It could be the best thing in the world, but if you don't have a good environment, it's like I'm not going to train.
Sometimes that's what gets you there that night, like your buddy or whatever, to see people. What were you saying?
I think Paul was fortunate because the core group of guys he had, the 10 guys he had in the beginning, were a very good group of guys. You know what I mean? And I think it's evident. I think it's evident now because the majority of those guys that were there, in the beginning, still train with him. They're still there, and they're still part of what he has.
Well, you see it. People look to you guys. It's like, Paul is one person, right? And only so many people can truly connect to that one person. I mean, he's human, right? But you guys would be surprised how many people connect to you guys, and that's their connection to Paul in some ways.
Yeah.
Or there's a co-connection.
I've realized
you need that core. You need the stronger that Paul was like a table. You guys are like legs of a table. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And without those legs, it falls, And it's very important, man, having black belts like you guys.
So, you don't have any kids. You
Not
have
that.
grandkids. yeah, not that we're aware of. We are. Your kids are older, but our kids. Are your girls training at all? They come up here occasionally.
My oldest trains, yeah. So right now we have her split between she does gymnastics and she does jiu-jitsu. I really want her to do a little bit more jiu-jitsu, but they kind of overlap each other. And absolutely, I mean, both of my daughters will train. My youngest one's not there yet, but my oldest does train. And my hope is that, to get her involved in it. She loves it now. I just, want it to be something that she really appreciates and loves, kind of the way, I do. And I realize you probably won't get to that, or she probably won't get to that until she's 11, 12, something like that. And she kind of recognizes it, sees it on her own, and starts to experience some of the things we're talking about. You know what I mean? So,
what do you guys think would be the reason why you would let your kids come and train? I mean, if you were talking to a parent that had kids that had never trained before, what would you tell them? What are they in for? What would you expect?
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, my three girls train up at Paul's, and the guys I've tried and I've helped with the kids classes, and it is not my gift. And you do a good job with the kids. You do. I've seen Sam teach with the kids. I really think there's a special gifting for that. Like, just because you're a great instructor doesn't mean you're going to be a good kids instructor.
Sure. No.
And not that I'm a great instructor, but I'm definitely not a good kids instructor. I'm like, you little brat, dude. That's not, no, and I'm saying it to my kids as well as other kids, So, don't send your kids to me to learn jiu-jitsu. But I do take my kids up to Paul's, and because I think the guys that are the instructors there, they're gifted. They're gifted instructors, but they're also gifted with kids.
Sure.
But we've talked a little bit about gym environments, and I'm not going to take my kids just anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take my kids just anywhere.
It shocks me sometimes to hear some of the stories. Parents that bring their kids to Paul's will say about, oh, my kid was here and they punch in the face, or they're teaching them chokes, and you're like, your kid's 5. he has no idea what like signs are of a problem or anything like that. It's crazy to hear some of the stories, and I mean, the instructors are fantastic. It's whenever I see, I don't know what your ratio is. I think it's probably something similar. There's usually one instructor to every 2, maybe 4 kids.
yeah.
So they're getting that perfect attention just in case something, they're right there at it. It's amazing. My kids, I got a 7 and a 5-year-old, and they both train, and we went for a period of time. I didn't push them into it. Mm-hmm. I wanted them to like it because they liked it, not because I did it and they were there with me. But now they're asking me, when can we go? When can we go? And that's awesome.
Well, I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and he was asking me questions. He's like, I did karate as a kid, and like, you did karate. I never did karate. Jiu-jitsu is it for me, when I found it. And it's like, but the thing is, like, when he's asked me, he's like, I figured I'd ask you what to do. I want to get him in karate. I'm like, okay, so I don't want to badmouth other arts. I mean, they all have their values. But if you're talking about something for like a functional self-defense, for something that, your kids really could use. Like if he gets in a fight on the playground, heaven
Yeah,
forbid.
bullying.
Yeah,
which is
or
a
what-
huge topic now.
It happens all the time.
Right.
But like, here's the thing: it's like you're not going to find. I told him, I said, you're not going to find anything better than jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a complete art. You know, there's so many different ways to handle a situation, to keep you safe, keep your kids safe, to keep everybody safe. You know, I would tell parents that and the reason my kids do it is because it's functional.
Yeah.
It works. It's functional.
Back to your question, Mark, because you were saying why would, as a parent, why would you get your kids to start and do it? I think all of those things are important. I think, it gives them confidence. It does all that stuff. But I think the other thing it does too is it gives them a format which they really can't experience any other way of what's going to happen in the world. The world is hard. It's tough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And,
Mental toughness.
it's very easy to quit and, rely on somebody else and blame other people and, do whatever. But I think what this does is it sets at a very early stage that there is no other equalizer other than hard work.
Yep.
Hard work is it. It
Yeah,
teaches them how to do it young, and it teaches them, foundational pieces, which they won't grasp, and you can't even teach those concepts when you have kids coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time they start to get to an age of 13, 14, 15 years old, then you go backwards and you teach them, how did we get to this point? And you can reference all of those things back to some of the stuff that, you did and some of the foundational pieces. I think it creates a really neat frame and structure of hard work and what you have to do to be successful at anything you do. I really think it's super important.
Yeah, one thing to say about what Ray was saying a second ago about people asking about, my kid does karate and this and that. I got sometime last year, it was a little bit after we started my kids into jiu-jitsu. They had some kind of karate demonstration at their school. So
Those are always fun.
he came home and thought karate was the stuff. He thought, and so I let him, just think about it. And again, I don't want to push him into jiu-jitsu. I want him to enjoy it because he likes it. So he kept on and on. And I finally lost my mind after it went on for about 2 or 3 weeks. Dad, why not karate? Why can't I do karate? Why this? Why karate this? So I said, get in here. So I put on YouTube and just typed in karate versus jiu-jitsu.
Yep. That's all the time.
And I said, who do you think's going to win? I'd say, you got 2 guys right here. Pick the guy that's going to win. This is the karate guy? Dad, the karate guy's going to win. And it's gone. Next video. He picked a karate guy like 10 times.
That sounds like a parenting failure to me.
Ironically, that's how I answer it because I get that question quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I say, look, I'm going to answer you honestly. And if you're just looking to have your kid learn some self-respect, discipline, they could take anything. As long as you go, the instructors treat them well, you observe the instructors in the environment, they can go anywhere. But if you want it to be functional, right? Then they have to do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You take them to karate, they could still come home, get beaten up by a kid. All the kid has to do is run and tackle them. And they'll get beaten up. And then, they're going to be shattered. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But if you want, it's up to you what you want. If you're like, well, Johnny just needs some discipline, man, go to the karate school. No problem. Shake hands. We can part as friends. But if you're saying, but I want him to learn self-defense, then he has to take jiu-jitsu, right? UFC proved. It's empirical data now.
Yeah.
A single individual art, one-on-one. Because people say, well, what about multiple attackers? All one of them has to do is tackle you. You know what I mean? I mean, this is all movie stuff.
Hinzo had the best answer for that. We were at a karate college once, and Hinzo said, somebody said something about multiple attackers, and Hinzo said, I hope you're faster than them. You need to be running. You've been training the longest. How long have you been training?
Since 98.
98?
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to get your black belt?
I got it in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That's quick, 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
Well, how long were y'all?
So wait, that makes you what? Second degree? Almost
second degree. Yeah.
coming up on your third degree?
Because something always happens. The thing people always call 8 years plus. People were always like, how fast can I get my black? Quickly can I get my black belt? Right?
Yeah.
Man, you got to be on the mat. You know what I mean? Like you have to train, but life happens. You get married, work, you get injuries, stuff
You
happens.
get transferred.
And then you get transferred.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
How many different instructors did you have?
Oh man! So I started in Atlanta, where I met Paul. We were under Jacare, and then we both moved, and we stayed in touch. And then I went to DC, and I got the rest of my belts from the Yamasakis. But as I got my brown belt, after I got my brown belt, I moved. So then I went to Florida with Pablo Popovich, right? Where we trained.
Yeah.
And then I was in LA with Sean Williams. Where we met. And but man, it's tough, man. People don't want to promote. They're not going to promote you before they promote their guy, you know. So I understood a little bit of that. But I was at the Pans in 2007, and David Jacobs, who I've been promoted with a few times already, had his black belt. And then Fernando walked up and he said he wanted to give me my black belt right before I competed. I won, so it was cool. But yeah, it was.
So 9 years.
Yeah, and I was scared a little bit. I almost thought about quitting. I was like, man, I moved from the Yamasakis. Is anybody going to give me my black belt? And I got a little disillusioned. And I owe it to Paul, actually. I don't know if I've ever told you guys this story. So I've been training pretty hard, blue belt, purple belt, competed, won the Pans in my division as a purple belt. But then when I was teaching, then when I got my brown belt, I got a little disillusioned. Then I moved. And I trained with Pablo, and I felt like I was Pablo's guy, like one of them. And I felt good. And then I moved again to LA, and I'm like, man, I'm starting all over again. I had work promotions. And I got a little disillusioned, and I wasn't training as hard. And I came back 2006 Christmas, so I went to the old school, the C. Paul school. Brad Adams and I went up there to train with Paul. Paul killed me. Man, he tapped me, and I remember thinking right after that, because Paul was so cool, man, we're close. And we joke around a lot when we go now. But he jokes around with me like that now because we can roll. Like Paul wouldn't joke around like that with me if he was just killing me because he wouldn't want to hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? That's how you can tell. I'm the same way. People are like, why are you always laughing when you're rolling? Because you're doing well. That's why I'm laughing. I'm not laughing to pick on you. You know what I mean? I'm laughing because you're doing well. Man.
And we're having fun.
Yeah. So I leave and I'm thinking, I'm like, I have two choices. Either I just quit or I train. And I went back and I trained. And then I wanted to
With Sean.
that March. Yeah.
Sean's great.
Yeah, Sean's a great
Good friend of
instructor.
Paul's.
Man, and I trained, man. And then I got my black belt. So I credit Paul with re-energizing me. And I don't know if you guys have similar stories in terms of times of disillusionment, you know what I mean, or having to be away from it. But man, I owe Paul a lot for that.
We both went through a little bit of a dry spell, didn't we, there, Josh? I don't remember when yours was. Was it purple belt or brown belt? That you kind of
Plateaued a little bit, yeah.
Well, I mean, like you just almost lost interest. So did I. I think I took 6 months off.
Yeah.
So I was like,
When did you start, Mark?
October 2003, and I got mine in my black belt in February of 14. So it was a little bit over 10 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And y'all were around 9 years, I think, right?
Well, he was the shortest.
Yeah.
He was.
I think the shortest ever.
You beat
Except for
BJ Penn's
BJ.
record
BJ Penn.
Beat Justin, then Justin, yeah.
I started
last year.
January. January 2005, and I got black belt at the same time you guys got, which was October of 2012.
So that's a 7-year black belt.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's really good.
It's interesting though. I don't know about you guys. I mean, everybody talks about time and all of that stuff. I mean, black belt was always it's a goal of mine. You know what I mean? So I don't want to come off and sound bad. And I know Paul and I have had this conversation before, but from the beginning, and I know you guys were the same way, but from the beginning, very quickly it became a passion I enjoyed. One that before I had kids. It was a problem. It was a borderline problem where, I was training 5 days a week, 3 times. I was training twice a day, and it very quickly became a passion and a problem. I remember having conversations early on with Paul about, hey, listen, I know it's unorthodox, and it's not something I would recommend to anybody, but I remember getting my first stripe, and Paul gave me the stripe, and I came up to him after class, and I said, listen, if it's okay, I would opt not to stripe if that's okay. I just, this is something I really enjoy and I want to do. And if it takes me 5 years to get another belt, I don't care. I mean, I'll wear a pink belt. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I really love training. I enjoy rolling. And so for me, I think what that did for me early on was it eliminated a lot of the self-pressure or any of that stuff about trying to get to the next belt. I was never interested in getting to the next belt. I never wanted to have the next belt. And so the weird thing was, I really felt this way from purple belt up.
Yeah.
Every time I got a belt, one, it was shocking. Two, it really, made me think that it was too early. You know what I mean? That was my self-analysis, and who was I to question Paul, you know what I mean? But I would get the belt and it was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if, I don't know if I'm ready to be, kind of in that spot or in that position or whatever. So I don't know. I enjoyed that progression and all of that, but I never really got worried about, the belts or any of that. And I really love training,
It's funny, like the three of us were the last ones and the only ones of Paul's students to never get a stripe. I don't know if y'all realize that. Like,
Yeah.
that's,
I knew that was coming. I knew he was going to. I knew he was going to pick on this.
no, well, because some people really, some people really checking their initials, making sure they got credit for the classes. And, I'm three initials away from my next stripe.
Edit that out.
Yeah. So we never got stripes. Like, Justin had that conversation with Paul. I don't know. Did you have any conversations with Paul about stripes?
I just asked not to as well.
Yeah, I remember asking him. I was like, "Did you ever get a stripe?" And he was like,
Yeah, Paul,
No.
we didn't come up
"No."
like that.
Yeah,
No,
and
we
I was
didn't.
like, "If it was good enough for you, it's good enough for
We
me."
would just get hit with a belt. Like, we were
That's-
old school, and then
Yeah.
you have your belt.
Yeah.
But it's but
Yeah, and so we never had stripes. And for me, my gauge, I started in 2003, May of 2003, and black belt in October of 12. So like 9.5 years. Josh was always my gauge. So like, I always just kind of knew that like, oh, Josh got promoted. I'll get mine within the next 6 to 8 months. Whatever it was, I always knew because, like I said, when we started together, he was a blue belt. He's already had his blue belt. And it's funny because I feel like I got promoted fast. And I feel like if I had started today, I wouldn't get promoted as fast. Like the people that are training with us now are getting a lot better, a lot faster because they have a lot of upper ranks to roll with. When it was just us, we were rolling with Paul, who was a brown belt, and a couple, Hurricane Harvey would come by, Brad would come by, Junior, Hoffy, Diego would come by occasionally and train with Paul. But that was all back at the old place. These were guys that were brown belts and black belts that were coming to train with Paul because they respected Paul so much, even though they technically outranked him.
Yeah.
And so we got to roll with those guys, but we were all rolling with each other. We didn't get a lot of upper belt kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think they're getting better faster than we are. And somebody made the joke the other day that purple belt Bray would not beat purple belt somebody else, and I was like, that's a joke. I understand, but that's probably true.
Yeah, yes and no, because I've seen. It's funny that you say that, because I came up in the same environment as Paul, right?
Yeah.
We thought purple belts were like magic.
Yeah, they're unicorns.
Brown
man. They
belts
weren't
are
around.
myths. They don't. I remember thinking, to your point, I was like, I can't. When I was a white belt, I'd never be a black belt. I can't. How am I supposed to know all that stuff? Right?
Yeah.
And now people walk up to me and ask for something like, no, this is what you do in this position, this is where you play this way. And it's like, how did that happen? Right? Like you think about that, it's weird. But you see a lot of that in competition. Now it's just different, right? Back then, no one wanted to talk to you unless you were a black belt. Now you have blue belts with like sponsorships. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And you have
Some white belts even.
you have very specific. You have all this flashy, very specific tournament games. You have very specific like tournament games and stuff. But you go to some of these tournaments, man, like just because it's flashy or somebody knows. Writes it in cursive. That doesn't mean that typing it out or in print doesn't work. And you're like, man, I play the same game now that I played when I was a blue belt before, and I'm doing it to these up and you know what I mean? Like, don't sell yourself short. And remember, you were training with only a couple of people, but look who you were training with.
Great people.
Like, and you were you say you got promoted sooner. When I think about like my academy, 2 years in, right? There are some of my guys that are just starting to get good, and some of them are like, "Oh man, I like the morning classes." And I'm like, "Why?" It's like because they're like our old classes. I just get to roll with you all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you get that variety, and there are benefits to having youth school, benefits to having that variety. But man, sometimes, man, that core group.
Yep.
You might surprise. Purple Belt Bray might surprise you.
Well, one of the things I value. It's one of the things I value most about being at Paul's was the fact that there were 10 of us, and you had to roll with Paul every day. You were able to get up every day. I thought that was, one of the best parts about being there.
My journey started in '96. Trained with Paul for a couple of years, and then when he went to New York, I moved over to Jacare. Trained with Jacare for probably about a year, and that's where I got my blue belt.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That was the.
So that means that me and Justin are really the only ones, or the three of us were the ones that got all of our belts.
Pure.
Yeah.
I got my blue. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not. Yeah. So
Paul's
it was-
been my only instructor.
I was going to say that, but y'all two probably are the only ones,
That
only instructor, right? Did you ever have another instructor other than Paul?
Only instructor. Yeah.
Only Paul.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, Sam was talking earlier about the slap on the back. That was like your old school. Here's
I
your
still like
belt,
that the
and
best
then
anyway.
and then you walk down the gauntlet.
Oh, no,
And,
I never did that.
Yeah, I remember Junior. He probably doesn't know who I am, but I remember specifically had a knot in his belt. And when he hit me, it like wrapped around my head, and I couldn't hear for like a week. It was rough. But you walk down, it was awesome. You walk down the gauntlet. Jacare tosses you at the end, and it was perfect, man. It was a cool experience. And then just life caught up with me. I got to college, couldn't afford training anymore for a little while, and took about a 3-year break. And when Paul came back from New York, that's when I started training with him again, and progressed up to the black belt in October 2012.
It's funny, he's mentioning cost, and this takes me back to why I didn't start. I did walk into a gym when I was 18 years old, and it was a mixed martial arts gym. I don't even remember where it was, but I walked in, I started talking to the guy. I'm an 18-year-old kid, kind of your point, and I asked him, well, how much is it to train? He's like, it's $150 a month. I'm like, I'm out. I'm out of here. And what's funny is now I sit back and I look at it and I think of, man, had I started, I get mad at myself because I started so late, but neither here nor there.
Just since I've known Paul, I was his first student. There's a lot of rumors out there I've read on some of the underground forums. There's a guy, I don't know if anybody's heard of him, Chad LaButts. He's out of Virginia, but he claims #1 spot. There's documentation that I am. But so in '96 is when I met him. It's almost been 20 years, which is crazy. But one of the things he used to say, and this was when it first started, it wasn't such like a business, and it wasn't that side of it. It was a lot more, it's just jiu-jitsu, and that's what you got. And once it evolved with more people, and it just had to turn into the business side of it. But one of the things Paul used to say to people when they would come in, and they'd be like, "Oh, how much is it? Oh, it's $150 a month," and they would be shocked. He's like, "Oh, it's no problem. You can go down the street, and you can get a hamburger from McDonald's, or you can stay here and get Stony River. It's your call." And that used to be my favorite thing. I would hear him say it in the office all the time. And it's so true, though.
Yeah.
It's very true. You get what you pay for, and especially with Paul. 100%, he's the Stony River of the jiu-jitsu in our area.
Well, it's funny now that I have it too. Now that I do jiu-jitsu, I would pay whatever price it required. If it was $300, $400, $500, I'd figure out how to do it. I'd cut back on a lot of other things in order to figure out how to do it. And you don't realize that until you.
It's funny that you say that, man, because I moved. Like we talk about, I moved a few times, and I didn't think about the cost at all. I walked in. As soon as I found where I wanted to train, I said, okay, let's sit down, let's do it. And then when they said the cost, I was like, wow. I was like, man, I'll pay whatever. because you're training.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge when people start. That's why they don't get. They put a number in and they think it's the same as going and doing something up, and you benefit. Like all the things we talked about, like the camaraderie, the friendship,
Right.
the way that it can impact your life. you know, the way you view yourself, the way you view others, you know, the way it can impact your life. You don't know that when you ask the cost. That's why it frustrates me when people call up and they're like, how much is it?
Right.
Come in and take a class. It's not a trick. I'm going to let you walk out if you know,
Right.
want to walk out. But you're asking me to tell you about something, you know, that you don't understand yet, you know?
It can also be due to, you know, a bad experience they've had going in somewhere else. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that happens, you know, but, you know, it's funny relating it to something else. I walk in, I ask, it's $150 a month, and then mentally I rationalize to myself, well, I can pay $20 and go to Planet Fitness.
Right.
Why would I pay $150 to come here? And that's what you think. You think that's what you're going to get, you know? So.
Yeah, when you have the experience, you're talking about people going to different places and all that, and I know you have yours up and running. I don't know if you ask questions, and I know Sam's is opening up in 2016. So this is something you can, you know, when you open up, you can ask people. It kind of gives you a good basis on what your academy's like. And in teaching the intro class, I see the guys when they first come in. So I'd see their first day or second day, whichever one me and Bray happen to get. I ask one or two questions. How'd you hear about us? And did you? If they say, oh, I trained somewhere else or this and that, I always follow up with, why do you like it here if they sign up? And it's a very interesting question, and it's it's hard to describe because they're fresh and they don't really understand the years behind it and the core group like you were talking about. But they always say it's just different here. Yeah. That's the majority of the people saying this, and it's amazing to hear a brand new person say the same exact thing as the 100 people right before them said.
Well, and dovetailing off of that a little bit is, you know, we get some folks that started somewhere else and moved in and upper ranks.
Yeah, that's
purple,
true. That
brown,
as well. Yep.
blue belts. You know, blue, purple, brown.
It's the
all
same answer.
It is.
Same
It
thing.
is.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
crazy. Because you know they're coming from somewhere, they have a set of experience, and maybe they've trained multiple places like you did. But it's like, you know, and they always ask me or you probably one of the upper ranks. They're like, you know, are there other schools around? And I'm like, listen, you know, I was talking to one guy recently. I know where he lives. He lives not close to Paul's, and I said, listen, there are other places around. Try them out. You'll end up here. I was like, I know it. I'm confident. I know these people. The jiu-jitsu community was a lot smaller when we started. Like everybody that has a school now, we knew them back in the day, and we knew them through Paul.
Yeah.
Because like there's purple belts and there's a brown belt and black belt that has a school not too far away, and like when they were blue belts, they used to come in and train with us because they knew who Paul was. Paul was never their main instructor, but they would come in when they can, and now they're not a direct competitor, but I mean, they're offering the same product. They're a competitor, and I'm like, they're not bad guys. I like those guys. But I'm like, go train wherever. You'll end up here because I know the product is good. And I know the product's good because of who it is and the culture they've created. And, they asked me, well, I've heard about so-and-so. I'm like, yeah, they have a gym. He's like, well, is it good? And I was like, yeah, they have a gym. He's like, so, should I do this? And I'm like, they have a gym. I'm not going to talk bad about somebody, but like, and, they eventually will get it. And I'm going to try it out. I'm like, cool, go. They always come back.
I think one of the, you bring it up, it's interesting. We're kind of getting all over the place, but one of the things I think that's incredible about Paul, and I've heard it mentioned a couple of times, is Paul is both a world-class athlete and also a world-class instructor. And I think it's very difficult to find both.
You don't find.
You know what I mean? And so there are a lot of really talented jiu-jitsu guys in the Atlanta area.
Yeah.
I mean, there are.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been a couple different places, and man, his ability to break things down and get it to the smallest level for people to understand. And, the thing I love about it, I was talking about it earlier, is he'll go back and he'll show a position that I saw 6 years ago, and I will catch a detail.
Yep. That's
You know what I mean? And it's something that's so simple, that went over my head 6 years ago, or, something.
I always blame him on he didn't show up before.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Well, Paul made that choice. That's the thing, because I was there when he, Paul and I, know each other for not as long as you and Paul.
Yeah, so you've known Paul
Yeah,
since
second
'98. Yeah.
But I was there when he was competing, and then when he made the decision to be an instructor. And one thing that, if you don't know, when people get to know Paul is really, really competitive, right? In a positive way. When Paul was competing, Paul was competing to win. I mean, he always had sportsmanship. He's a class guy. He's competing to win. And when he made the decision, he said, instead of being a world-class athlete, now I want to have a world-class facility, world-class instruction. So all that energy is into the school, the students. He's pouring it in, that effort. So you have other people that say, oh man, this person's so talented, this person's so this person's so that. But unless they've made that choice to be a world-class instructor and put in the work, like made the sacrifices in order to make that happen, right? Yeah. Which is, when I say made that choice, I'm not saying, oh, I made that choice, now let me go, do whatever. No, you have to make the sacrifices to make that happen. Paul has done that. And you could see the results, which is really cool.
I think that, speaking about that too, is from the creation of the gym, one of the things I really appreciate, I'm telling you, if you go ask any of the 20 to 30 guys that trained at the old gym that still train, every single one of them says that, the new gym is unbelievable, it's fantastic, but every single one of them loves the old gym more than they like the new gym. And I think it's, it speaks to some of kind of what you're talking about, Sam, where, it was neat to see Paul go through the whole gamut of when he decided to, kind of go back through and run his own business. It was like he was doing jiu-jitsu all over again. Yeah. The cool part that I like is you can look around and you can see all these gyms that pop up all over the place, and everybody wants a big gym and they want all these students, and so they go and they, create all this debt, and they, build these big places. And it was neat for me to see you walk in a small place and to see who was willing to go work in the small places and learn from these small places and the people who weren't. Because they needed the pretty gym. They needed the place to look good, to feel good about where they went. And so I think a lot of people would walk into that gym and they'd write Paul off because of, man, what is the
size? Yeah. Not that it didn't look good, because it was always clean. I mean, how many times have we patch the holes up?
Or even more ridiculous, that he was just a brown belt at the time. Right. He wasn't your average brown belt.
So the funny thing is, he was mentioning it earlier, there are stories about that. I distinctly remember when I trained with Paul that first year, because he was a brown belt the first year, but I remember nobody came in. And then in September of that year, he gets his black belt, and my God, a month or 2 months after that, man, all these black belts start coming. I'm like, what is going on? And I distinctly remember somebody, I don't remember who told me, but somebody's like, they want to come in and get beat by, a brown belt. Paul. I'm not gonna say they did or didn't, but I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But now all of a sudden we would start to have all these black belts, and people start to spew into the academy. Once he got his black belt. It's funny you say that.
Yeah, and I've taken classes and I've trained with, people that have won world championships and they're IBJJF world champions. And it's funny because where Paul's age is, even with the UFC, he's been there, he's done that, he's done everything he could competitively in wrestling and jiu-jitsu and MMA, he's done it, but he was pre-explosion, if you will. I mean, to some degree, I mean, you walked along with him through a lot of that. I mean, it was pre-explosion. We're benefiting from mass marketing. I remember we used to go to see Paul's whenever the UFC came on, because there was 3 or 4 a year, and it was a big deal. Now it's like, I recorded DVR and watched it last night, and didn't care, because if I miss it, there's gonna be one. There's gonna be one next week. But back in the day, that wasn't how it was, And Paul was always a guy that even though he was pre-explosion and all that, I mean, he had accomplished so much already. And I've taken classes from people that were the world champs, IBJJF, da-da-da-da-da. And Paul could have been that guy if he was born a decade or so, later. Just he fell on it and didn't. But those guys don't have the teaching ability that Paul has. They're just ability. I mean, like you're saying, when he makes up his mind to do something, he just does it.
Yeah, he makes the sacrifices necessary in order to
he's very goal driven. He's results driven, and when he makes up his mind to do something, it's going to get done.
Yeah.
Well, it's everybody talks about how success is consistent action. You get consistency with Paul all the time. It's he's the same. He's pretty much the same every single day. He just continues to do everything the same day and does his thing. And he does it right. He's doing things right every single day. Right. And he continues to do that over and over again. And he's made that commitment. He's made the sacrifices. And he's, look at the results. Everything he's done, he's been at the top level. in his athletic career.
The way the setup is now with the academy, you know, me and Bray, whoever it may be, teaches the intro and then the beginner class. And so a lot of guys in the beginner, intro and beginner, I feel bad for because they didn't get necessarily what I benefited from.
I understand what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
But like he said earlier, don't sell yourself short.
They don't even know what they're missing.
And a lot of times Paul he'll come, you know, a little bit early for the next class, or I'll even go to, hey man, just come out here and teach one thing. Just he doesn't. I know in his mind he's got a lot going on and things, and in his mind he may not think, you know, he's on that level just because he's so humble and all that. But I'm like, you don't understand, man. Just go out there and just show one thing to this. It's on another level, man.
He's never walked on the mat when I was teaching
Yeah.
a class. I would forget everything. I'd forget how to do a triangle. I'd be so nervous. I'd be like, Paul, seriously, you got to go back. You got to get out of here, man. You're freaking me out.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna ask him to come out there because he came out there. I was out there with Mark a couple weeks ago, and there was one of those guys where you were talking earlier about the egos, and there's one of these guys that came in. He was, you know, I asked we line up at the beginning of class. I'm pairing everybody. I was like, hey man, you ever trained before? And he was like, since I was 12. I was like, glad you're here, buddy. And I mean, I don't know what he had trained, but it wasn't jiu-jitsu. And
That became
to this, yeah. And so like, Paul met this guy up front, and like he does with everybody, he meets everybody up front, whatever, and he walks back there, and I'm kind of catching the eye that like, you know, be on top of this. You know, Paul, this isn't a gym where it's like he's going to come in and we're going to beat him up and show him what it is, but it's like, hey, be on top of him. Don't put him with somebody that's brand new because,
Right.
you know, we try to protect everybody. And so he's standing out there while I'm teaching, and I'm looking at Mark. I'm like, I know why he's here, but I'm still nervous. I'm like, and Mark's like, he doesn't come out here when I'm teaching. I'm like, you know, but like, you know, it was. Even now, training with Paul as long as I did, I'm out there teaching a move, and I feel like I'm not, like I said, I'm not the best instructor, but I think you could do a lot worse. And I've seen a lot worse, actually. You know, still Paul just being there because of who he is, you know, because of the respect I have for him. You know, we're out there representing his product. I want to put forth a good product, and like when he's standing there, even though it's completely innocent for him, and he just wants to see what's going on. He wants to touch, taste, and feel what's going on. Like, I'm nervous because I want a good product. I want Paul to be like, okay.
I was never nervous. I don't care if you watch. I don't care if you leave. In fact, you should come out here and learn a little something.
You had to go there. I knew that.
You know, Sam, speaking about this too, this is interesting for me, going back to kind of the thought process of, and I know I'm going backwards, but about what's hard. But coming from a small gym, one of the things I appreciated was kind of what Bray was talking about, was we would get to roll with him every single day. But the problem is you roll with the same 10 people. Mm-hmm. And for me, my confidence really didn't change until I actually got a chance to go up and train at Henzo's. You know what I mean? And I remember walking into Henzo's and it was just like, oh man, I don't belong here. I don't belong. And I just got my blue belt. I don't belong here. And you know, I walk into the environment. The class is huge. There's 100 guys in the class. It's very intimidating. And you know, I distinctly remember that's when my confidence level went through the roof, because I trained with all of these guys, and you know, I could hang with these guys. And so I left that, you know, the gym that night, and I was like, my gosh, I mean, what we're learning is it's jiu-jitsu. There isn't some secret that, you know, these guys possess. It's the level of your instruction. And you know, that's one of the hard things I face now, is when you have a small group of guys, a core group of guys, helping them understand, because I hear it from time to time, like, man, I just don't feel like I'm improving. I don't feel like I'm getting better. And it's, you know, you constantly have to relate to, you know, these guys that, you know, I see what you don't see. Your growth is small, and you know, I just feel like that got knocked out very early, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier also about, you know, who got what belt, who got when. And one of the things that I think is so important for me is it wasn't my skill set that, you know, helped me, you know, move quicker. I came in and you guys were already here, you know what I mean? And so without you guys being there, there's no way I can be where I want to be. And I think that's lost on a lot of people when they come in and train.
Yeah.
And I've seen it locally. There are, several people that gym hop and move gym to gym thinking that they're just going to suck whatever they can from one gym and move to the next and move to the next. And, I think that you're only as good as the people you train with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that that's been largely, if I had to say one thing, the key to my success, along with, Paul's culture and all that stuff too.
So you're not denying your success now.
If I have any success, it would be very little to do with myself. But
No, I agree with that. I think I agree with you 100%. It's very tough because we see things through our own eyes, like our journey. And you guys have come up, and you've had Paul and different people come into the gym. And then by the time I got back here, we moved back as a black belt and started training and teaching at the academy. You have one of the biggest schools, in Atlanta, in the state, right? High quality of guys, variety of partners to train with, right? But when you're smaller, while you have that, man, I'm training with Paul every day, or I'm training with these guys every day, it's very easy to think that you're in a small pond and there's magic going on in all these other places, and you defeat yourself in your mind.
Right.
Like being able to communicate confidence to people, right? To let them know that what they're doing is worthwhile on the mat. That's tricky. That can be tough.
Sure.
And I agree with you. That is, as an instructor, that's a hard thing.
I agree.
That's a very hard thing. That's probably the hardest.
So it's funny, like when you think back through all the years, that we've known Paul.
Too long.
Too long. But there's all the stuff that makes him cool on the mat, as far as like we've talked about extensively, the atmosphere he's created on the mat. But the cool thing about Paul is he's not one person on the mat as he is off the mat. Like I was talking about earlier, back in the day, and it would be nearly impossible. And I kind of remember, I was having more kids and the switch was made, but we used to go to Paul's house to watch every UFC.
Yeah. Yep.
It's we're going to Paul's house, and it's yeah, come over, pizza, bring this, everybody pitch in, but oftentimes he just had stuff there for us because he's a generous guy anyway. We didn't do that. So there's a friendship that was off the mat too, not just on the mat. It's not he's just a great guy to train under because that's the best thing for his business. No, he's a great guy to train under because he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He's generous, he's kind. And then when the gym got too big, then everybody started going watching the UFCs at these bars, and I was like, man, I got too many kids now. Tell me why. But but the offer's still there. Yeah. It's still there. Life changes, priorities change to some degree, but there's still Paul, who's still the same, who's still your friend, who's still all those things he was.
I would agree 100%. Speaking of a personal situation that happened for me, and I don't know, I'm probably like you guys. I don't like taking help from anybody. I don't like it. You know what I mean? I just don't like any of that. And I distinctly remember a situation that happened to me that was kind of out of the blue. I was actually coming up to do class one morning, and I was driving up to the gym, and on my way in, I had a car slam into the side of my door, totaled my car. Luckily, I was only 3/4 of a mile, so I just ran the gym and did class anyway. So that's how crazy it is. But I ended up going down there. I did class. A couple of the people on the way to class drove by and saw that my car got hit, and so I remember Isaac and a couple of people came up and they're like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? Is everything all right?" I was like, "Yeah, my hand's a little bit sore, because the airbag went off. I kind of put my hand in the windshield, but." Anyway, so I get to class, and I'm training. Paul's like, "Are you okay?" Takes a interest in make sure I was okay. And I said, "Yeah, everything's fine. He's like, "Well, how are you getting home? What are you gonna do?" I was like, "Oh, it's no big deal. My wife's gonna come get me. We'll be fine." And after class, he comes and pulls me aside and says, "Well, dude, your car's totaled. What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Well, I just gotta deal with it. We'll figure it out, and whatever." He's like, "Well, what are you gonna drive right now?" And I was like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll get a rental car. So he's like, no, don't do that. I have the extra car at the house. Just take
Cougar.
he says I have the extra car at the house. I don't drive it. Drive it. And I was like, no, Paul. Like I can't do that. Like there's no way I can do that. I can't do that. He's like, yes, I insist. I 100% insist. I'm 3 minutes from the house. Isaac will ride with me, or you ride with me. You get the car, take it as long as you need it, and we'll kind of go from there. And I distinctly remember, just feeling like I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? I didn't want to, but it was a cool experience. You know what I mean? Just because, kind of to what Bray's talking about, he'll do anything for his guys or for any of that. And so I thought that was a really cool thing. Kind of speaks about who he is outside of the mat, not just on the mat.
That's one of the things I was going to touch on. Is that he is loyal. He really is. I mean, if you're his friend, if you're his friend, you're his friend. He's not like two-faced. There's no, what you see is what you get, and he's very, very loyal. Yeah. And but he expects it back. He does, and that's a good thing. I mean, I think he's a good, loyal person. That's one of the qualities I would say is probably number one for me. Mm-hmm. What about you? You've known him forever.
I knew Paul when we were training together, and then we weren't training together. We both moved, so we were on different teams. Stayed in touch. No reason to stay in touch besides friendship. And then I was moving around. I knew when he was starting his business, and I was riding high in corporate America. And then now it's flipped. Now he's established, and I'm starting a business, right? So I've had a variety of relationships with Paul, and a variety of, position changes. He's the same throughout. Loyal, generous, patient, kind.
Funny,
very funny. Very funny.
But you know what I mean? Like, he is the same throughout.
Sure.
What you see is what you get with Paul. And if you don't like it, then...
Well, if you don't like it, the problem's really on you.
Go someplace else, man, because it's not him. You know what I mean? Like, what you see is what you get. He's a good guy. I'm proud to call him friend. So.
Yeah, one of the things I enjoy most, and I don't know where the transition was made, because I was young. I was 16 when I was training with him, and he was my instructor. And it was all professional. And I'm not sure where that transition was made, where we become really good friends. Man, I wouldn't give up the journey that I've taken with him. It's almost 20 years now that I've known him. Some of the best times that I've had are when we travel together. Yeah. And we'll go, teach a seminar, different places, or go to fights, or one time we flew, and it was a Braves plane. And Bray took up like 3/4 of the plane because he had a leg thing. I
had knee surgery. I couldn't bend my knee.
I was literally sitting with the baggage in like the cargo part of the plane. Paul's he's scared to fly like this, scared of different, getting up high and stuff. And
I mean, so me too if you're that short.
I knew that was going to come in at some point.
He's all cramped up in there, and then they go to start the plane, and they go, nothing. Nothing. Paul turns around and looks at me, he goes, you can start a lawnmower easier than this. Dude, it was the best, man. We had such good times traveling. And we'll drive, 6, 7, 8 hours. And just talk the whole time. It's awesome.
Real easy traveling with Paul, because you're right. You talk and the miles just bleed away.
Yeah. I mean, and some of my favorite things that I get from him are, you guys probably get these too, but I'll get like these. The shortest one I've probably gotten is a minute. I mean, sometimes they go 2 or 3 minutes. He'll sing on my voicemail. It's awesome. He can rap, he can sing.
He can just do it all.
Yeah.
Now, also, I'd be interested to find out, from you two in particular, like, seeing where the academy was, seeing where it's gotten, and now, like you were just talking about, starting your own academy, the kind of advice, the kind of encouragement, the kind of support you've gotten from Paul in that. Like,
So for me, the funny part is, I probably would have never even attempted doing an academy without Paul. I distinctly remember, being a brown belt. We have the personal conversations about work and things like that, and how's work going, and I'm honest with him about, been that way through the years, but. He came to me, towards the end of, my brown belt, I think, and was like, "Hey, man, you ever thought about doing this?"
did he ever come to you?
He actually told me not to.
Yeah, he said, please don't. Yeah, so, okay.
That's funny.
I never had that conversation.
He said, "Hey, have you ever, thought about doing this?" And I said, "No, not really. I never did. I just, like doing it, and I enjoyed, doing the small classes that, I teach or whatever up there." And he says, we could do it. He says, I could show you everything. I could tell you what to do, what not to do. And I think that's been more valuable to me than anything else. Is I remember sitting down, having a long conversation with him. I think I'm going to try a small little spot, Paul, and just, see. And we've had this conversation before. You've had some goals and things like that you've talked about before. But, I remember him just being all about it. He was just as excited about doing it as I was. And, I think the most important thing that I've gotten from him is he's kind of, fostered me being able to do it, is he tells me what not to do, and I just listen. You know what I mean? If he can, tell me, and he's gotten his gym where it is now. If he can tell me how to do jiu-jitsu, and I've been through the whole process from the beginning to the end, and I see where he is now, then it's probably wise for me to just listen and do what he tells me to do. And so, he's made the mistakes, and allows me not to make some of the mistakes based on what he tells me to do, and it's just absolutely invaluable.
Same thing. The only thing I would add to that, and when I say he's generous, he's definitely generous with that. And the excitement, like you said, when I celebrate wins, he celebrates them with me. But there have been a couple of other things he's done. I can be an emotional person, and man, he takes the time. I mean, literally, it's almost daily where we talk, and he's constantly like my biggest cheerleader. You know what I mean? Like that constant voice of encouragement.
Sure.
Like we talked about, some days, especially when you're starting, one person comes in, nobody comes in, two people come in. He's like, man, that happens. That's great, man. One day you're gonna look back at that and you're gonna laugh. You're gonna smile. Just keep doing the right thing. Keep doing what you're doing. And you have no idea what that means. You guys probably relate in other places in your lives, but in terms of there's a difference between going to an academy, and we were teaching at Paul's, there'd be like 40 people on the mat for our classes, right? And then you go and you open up your own place, a couple people come in at first, and it's like, man, but that, and then the support, and I told Paul this personally, but the support that all of you guys, besides Josh, have given my academy.
I do joke a lot about it, and Sam did open last year, so if anybody doesn't if you do want to train, it's www.bankheadjiu-jitsu.com.
So, no, but in all seriousness, when I look, whether it's online or just a word of encouragement or people showing up, or even at tournaments, I've had my guys say, man, it's so great. We go to a tournament, and I had a guy from Creighton walk up and say, hey, if you've seen Sam yet? Because if Sam's not here yet, you can come sit with us, You can come sit with us and be with us. And just like that family, you know what I mean? Like that pure family, like cousins, and family. That's just something that I take that from Paul, and that lives through you guys. It's awesome. It's awesome.
And again, that all starts with Paul.
Yeah. Paul, I just want to thank you. You're my brother, man. You've been such a great friend to me over the years, and I thank God that you've been in my life all these years, and I can't even count the ways that you've impacted my life. You're a great guy, Paul. Love you, man.
Paul, I wanted to tell you, I appreciate everything that you've done for me over the years. A lot of things that people don't even know, a lot of talks that we've had. You're a great guy, man, and I really appreciate everything you've ever done for me. And we got a good relationship. We got some great talks, and I appreciate it. I won't ever forget you, that's for sure. And I look forward to being with you for a long time. I appreciate everything, buddy.
PC, hey man, thanks for the journey that we've been on. 20 years, long time, and appreciate everything you've done for me.
Where am I looking? Am I looking at your eyes? Am I looking at the camera? Sasquatch, man, brother, I love you. I'm a better person, a better man, a better dad in a lot of ways, and husband potentially because of the stuff I've learned from you on and off the mat.
Paul, I don't know how to follow up behind those guys. It's been incredible being part of what you've set up and just to be part of, the relationships that I've been part of over the years, and the people I've met just because of what you've created has been awesome. So I appreciate everything that you've done for me, and I know that on the days that I get to come in and let my stress go, my wife's appreciative, so she would thank you also. So thanks for everything, Paul.